They always come at night. Silent, watching, and impossible to ignore. Some say you'll only see them if you're in the wrong place, at the wrong time. And once they notice you, there's no turning back. I never planned on returning to Amarillo, Texas. Not after the kind of childhood I had there. Empty fields stretching farther than your fear could run. Nights so silent you felt watched even when you were alone. And memories that clung to you like the dust storms that rolled in every fall. But when my dad died this January, a lonely heart attack in his old trailer at the edge of Palo Duro Canyon, I couldn't ignore the pull of unfinished business. I was 32, exhausted from a failed marriage, and torn somewhere between guilt and resentment. Guilt for leaving him behind, resentment for all the reasons I left in the first place. So when I arrived, the trailer looked smaller, frailer, like it had been shrinking since the day I left at 16. The sheriff told me he'd been gone for hours before anyone noticed. Didn't have many visitors, he said gently, which was the nice way of saying my father had grown into a ghost long before he died. I told myself that settling his property and clearing out his things would be quick, mechanical tasks. I didn't factor in the long nights, the isolation, or the memories creeping in through the thin trailer walls. The first night, I tried to sleep on the worn-out recliner he practically lived in. The canyon winds pressed against the windows like fingers tapping for attention. Around 1:14 a.m., the tapping became real sharp, deliberate knocks at the door. I jolted up, disoriented, thinking maybe the sheriff came back. But when I opened the door, nobody was standing there. It wasn't until I stepped outside that I saw the tracks in the dust, small, bare footprints, like those of a child. I told myself it had to be neighborhood kids, but nobody lived within half a mile. On the second day, while sorting through my father's desk, I found an envelope wedged behind the bottom drawer. It was addressed to me, though I had never known him to send letters. Inside was a single sheet of paper, written in hurried, shaking handwriting. If they come back, don't talk to them. Don't listen. Don't let them in. No explanation. No signature. I'd have dismissed it as the ramblings of a lonely mind if the knocking hadn't returned that night, this time at 2-3 a.m. This time, louder, more rhythmic. I didn't open the door. I didn't even go near it. I sat on the recliner, holding my breath, listening as the knocks shifted from the door to the windows, moving around the trailer like someone circling it slowly. But the creepiest part wasn't the knocking. It was the voice. A child's voice, soft, polite, almost rehearsed. "Sir, please, we need help. Let us in." The way the voice traveled, never too loud, never desperate, just wrong. Like reading from a script that didn't match a human's intuition. I froze, heart pounding, not daring to speak. When I finally worked up the courage to peek through the blinds, there was nothing there. Only the faint sound of wind brushing through the canyon grass. By morning, I convinced myself I had half-dreamed it. Stress, grief, isolation, any rational excuse. But then my dad's neighbor, a rancher named Wayne, came by with a casserole and a warning. "You hear anything strange last night?" he asked. When I hesitated, he sighed. "Figures. Your daddy kept to himself, but he wasn't crazy. He told me that folks in this part of Texas had been whispering about strange children seen at night for years. Children who looked normal from a distance, but whose eyes were wrong. When I asked what wrong meant, he shook his head. Pure black. No whites, like looking straight into a well. That made me think of something I hadn't thought about in decades. A story my dad used to tell me. One he said he'd heard from his own father. Two kids knocking on a farmhouse door in the 1950 seconds, asking to be let inside to use the phone. The farmer refused, sensing something cold and unnatural in the way they spoke. By morning, livestock were found dead, and the farmer swore the children had been watching him from the tree line until dawn. I laughed it off as superstition when I was younger. But then, Wayne said the thing that stuck with me, like a splinter under skin. There was a report back in '96. Some journalist named Brian Bethel, right here in Texas, said two of them approached him outside a movie theater in Abilene, asked him for a ride, said they needed to get home. He swore their eyes were black as oil, but the rest of them, polite, calm, like they didn't know how to pretend to be kids. That one I had heard of. The Bethel case was one of the earliest documented reports of the Black-Eyed Children. It popped up on old internet forums years ago, people debating whether it was paranormal, psychological, or a hoax. But hearing it spoken aloud, in broad daylight, with the memory of last night's knocking still fresh, made a cold wave crawl through me. That night, I locked the door, shut every window, and left every light on. Around 11:40 p.m., I heard a car driving slowly up the dirt road toward the trailer. Nobody drove out here unless they meant to. I peeked through the window and saw an old green pickup I didn't recognize. A pale shape stood beside it. At first, I thought it was Wayne again, but the figure was too small. A child. A boy, maybe 12 or 13. He stood perfectly still, facing the trailer. No fidgeting. No shifting weight from one foot to the other, just stillness, like a deer caught in headlights. Except he was the headlights. Slowly, he began walking toward the door. My breath froze. He knocked once, twice, 3 times precise, evenly spaced. Then he spoke, in a flat, emotionless voice. "Please, I need help. May I come in?" My throat tightened. I didn't answer. "Please," he repeated, louder this time. "I can't come in unless you allow me." Every instinct screamed that something was deeply, dangerously wrong. I thought about my father's letter. Don't talk to them. Don't listen. Don't let them in. The boy stepped closer to the window, and for the first time I saw his face. Pale skin. 2 perfect features. Hair neatly combed. He looked like a normal kid except for the eyes, black, bottomless, glossy like polished stones. When he tilted his head upward, the porch light reflected in them, but not in the way normal eyes reflect light. It was like shining a flashlight into a tunnel. I stumbled backward, knocking over a lamp. When I looked again, he was gone. No footsteps walking away. No sound, just gone, like he dissolved into the night. I didn't sleep at all. By morning, the exhaustion and adrenaline pushed me to the sheriff's office. I told him everything. Though I left out the eyes, I didn't want to sound unhinged. He offered to swing by the trailer later, but I could see the skepticism in his expression. People out here believed in coyotes, trespassers, drug runners, not supernatural kids lurking in the dark. The rest of the day passed in a haze of paperwork and sorting through my dad's belongings. The sun dipped behind the canyon early, casting long shadows across the trailer. I told myself I'd leave tomorrow, drive back to Dallas, hire someone else to deal with the rest. I just needed one more night. One last night in this place that felt like it was holding its breath. Around midnight, I heard whispering. Not outside, inside. It came from the back hallway. I froze, listening. It sounded like 2 voices, overlapping, speaking softly in a tone that was almost chanting. My skin crawled. I grabbed the flashlight and crept down the hallway. The whispering stopped. I reached my father's bedroom door, hand shaking, and swung it open. Nothing. Just the stale smell of old sheets and dust. Then the knocking began again, this time harder, more desperate. I moved toward the front door slowly, heart pounding. When I looked through the peephole, 2 children stood on the porch, a boy and a girl, both pale, both smiling faintly, both with eyes blacker than night. "We need to come in now," the girl said. "It's very cold." But the temperature outside was in the high 50s. "Please, let us in," the boy added. But this time the politeness had faded. There was an edge beneath it, thin, sharp, hungry. I stepped back from the door. They knocked again, harder. "Let us in." Their voices shifted, no longer polite, not even human-sounding, layered, discordant, like several voices speaking through one throat. "Let us in." I didn't remember grabbing my keys. I didn't remember running out the back door or sprinting to my car. I only remembered driving, fast, reckless, choking on panic as I tore down the dirt road, headlights bouncing wildly. It wasn't until I reached the highway that I dared look in the rearview mirror. For a split second, I saw 2 small silhouettes standing in the middle of the road behind me, motionless, watching, and then they vanished, as if the darkness swallowed them whole. I drove straight into town and checked into the only motel still open at 2:30 a.m. The clerk barely looked up from his newspaper when I stumbled in, shaking. I didn't tell him anything. What was I supposed to say? That something impossible followed me out of the canyon? That I left my father's trailer unlocked with God knows what standing outside? When I finally collapsed onto the stiff motel mattress, the exhaustion hit me like a tide. I thought I'd fall asleep instantly, but then quietly, impossibly, I heard tapping on the motel room window. And a child's voice. "Sir, we can't find you. Please let us in." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I stared at the motel window, the thin curtains trembling slightly, as if touched by someone on the other side. The tapping came again, gentler this time, like a child too timid to knock loudly. "Sir, please." The voice drifted through the glass like fog seeping under a door. My pulse hammered against my ribs. I kept telling myself I was imagining it. That fear was rewriting every sound into something supernatural. But then came the second voice, the girl's voice. "We found you." Those 3 words froze the blood in my veins. I forced myself to get up, inch by inch, and approached the window as quietly as possible. When I lifted the edge of the curtain 1 finger's width, nothing was there. Just the glow of the motel's flickering parking lot light casting a pale cone onto the pavement. No children, no shadows, no footprints. And yet the air felt wrong, thick, humming, with a silence that felt manufactured, not natural. I backed away slowly and grabbed the motel room phone, dialing the front desk. The clerk answered, sounding half asleep until I told him someone was outside my window. His tone sharpened instantly. "Stay inside," he said. "I'll send someone to check it out." But I didn't feel reassured. Something in his voice felt off, like he wasn't surprised, like he'd been expecting this kind of call. I waited, heart in my throat, listening for any sound outside. After what felt like 20 minutes, a knock came at my door. Not the tapping of a child, this was heavier, firmer. "It's the night manager," a man's voice said. Still, I hesitated. "Who else would it be?" he added, annoyed. Slowly, I cracked open the door. A man in a beige uniform stood there, holding a flashlight. He was older, maybe in his 60s, with tired eyes and a cigarette tucked behind his ear. "Nobody's out there," he said. I checked the whole lot. His shirt pocket had a stitched name, Rogers. I exhaled shakily. "You sure?" He nodded. "Son, this place may be old, but if there were kids running around tapping windows at this hour, I'd have seen them. I almost closed the door almost." But then he added something that made my stomach twist. "You're not the first guest to complain about that sort of thing." The way he said it, casual, resigned, made the hairs on my arms rise. "What do you mean?" I asked. Rogers glanced over his shoulder into the empty parking lot before leaning in a little. "Kids. Always kids. Always late at night. Folks say they talk funny, look funny." He studied me with an uneasy frown. "You saw their eyes, didn't you?" My throat went dry. I didn't say anything about their eyes." Rogers nodded slowly. "Didn't have to. People who see them always look the same afterward." With that, he stepped back. "Lock your door. Try to sleep. They usually don't stay long. Usually." The word gnawed at me long after he left. I locked the door, shoved a chair under the handle, and sat awake until sunrise. By morning, I'd made my decision. I was leaving Amarillo for good. I'd collect whatever documents I needed from the county office, sign over the trailer to the state, and never look back. But when I returned to the canyon road to grab my father's personal files, the door to the trailer was wide open. I froze. I hadn't left it open last night. I stepped inside cautiously. The place was silent. Still, but not untouched. The dining chair was moved away from the table. The curtains were drawn back unevenly, and on the kitchen counter, scratched into the dust, were 2 words: "Let US." My breath caught. That was all. No explanation, just "Let US," carved with something sharp. Maybe a knife, maybe a fingernail. I backed out of the trailer without touching anything else. Something had been here, something that knew I would come back, something that wanted to leave a message. I walked briskly to my car, but when I opened the driver's door, a folded piece of paper sat in the middle of the seat. I hadn't seen it when I got out. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. It was written in the same shaky handwriting as my father's letter. Just 4 words this time. "They don't stop, son." My father must have been tormented by them too. The knocks, the voices, the children. And he died alone out here trying to warn me. I could have driven off then, sped down the highway and tried to pretend none of it was real. But something pulled me back, not curiosity, not courage, but guilt. If these things had tormented my father for years, if they'd driven him into isolation and fear, then leaving without understanding why felt like abandoning him all over again. So instead of fleeing Amarillo, I drove to the public library. I needed to know more. I dug through old newspaper archives, online databases, fringe forums, the kinds of places the Bethel incident from 1996 was still whispered about. His story was there, preserved like a fossil in digital amber. 2 children approached his car in Abilene, Texas, late one evening outside a movie theater. They asked him for a ride. They insisted he must let them in. When he refused, their eyes turned black, completely black. Bethel had stood by the story for years. Skeptics tore it apart. Believers held it up as the first modern proof. But what chilled me wasn't the report, it was the comments beneath it. Half a dozen posts from different users over the years, all referencing Amarillo. I saw them outside my apartment near Western Crossing. 2 kids knocked on my dorm room door at WTAMU around 2 a.m. They asked to be let in. Eyes were wrong. The postings spanned nearly 2 decades. Different names, different circumstances, but always the same description, always the same behavior, and many of the locations pinpointed within 10 miles of my father's trailer. One comment in particular made my skin tighten. They appear most often to people who are grieving, people who've lost someone, people who are vulnerable. They pretend to be children because grief makes us want to help someone smaller, weaker. I slammed the laptop shut so fast the librarian looked over. My grief, my father's death. They had targeted me because they sensed it, preyed on it. That night, I checked into a different motel on the opposite side of town. I didn't tell anyone my name. Paid cash. Closed the curtains and sat with my back against the wall. Around 1:17 a.m., the knocks came. Soft. Polite. "Sir, we're lost. May we come in?" My breath hitched. They had found me again. Not by tracking me, by sensing me. The grief, the fear, the crack in my emotional armor. But this time, I didn't answer. I didn't make a sound. And for nearly an hour, they stayed. Their small silhouettes shifted in front of the curtains, pacing, tapping, whispering. "We can help you," the girl's voice murmured. "Let us in, and you won't feel alone." That was the moment I realized their nature, their hook. They didn't just mimic children. They mimicked need. They whispered to the vulnerable, offering comfort that felt like relief until it was too late. When dawn finally broke, I knew running wouldn't save me. They would follow me wherever grief followed me. The only way to end it was to confront whatever they wanted on my terms. So I drove back to the canyon one last time. The air was still, too still. The trailer sat silent beneath the pale morning sky. I walked inside, the floor creaking under my boots. "I'm here," I whispered, my voice shaking. "What do you want?" For a long moment, nothing. Then, a soft shuffling behind me. I turned. 2 children stood in the hallway. The same boy, the same girl. Eyes black, skin pale, their smiles thin and wrong. "We want you," the girl said simply. "You're sad," the boy added. "We can take the sadness away." I backed toward the door but stopped. I thought of my father, of his isolation, his terror, his unfinished letter to me. And in that moment, something changed inside me. Grief didn't weaken me, it clarified me. I steadied my breath. "You can't come in unless I invite you, right?" They stiffened, their smiles faded. "Invite us," the girl whispered. "Say the words." That was their rule, their limitation, the one thing they couldn't override. I stepped outside the trailer door, heart pounding, and slammed it shut behind me. "Then, I don't invite you," I said. "Not now, not ever." For the first time, their expression shifted. Not polite, not emotionless, but furious. Their small fists pounded the door, rattling the frame, shaking the walls. Their voices layered, rising into a distorted chorus that scraped against my nerves like metal on bone. "Let us in, let us in, let us in." I ran to my car, engine trembling beneath my hands as I fumbled the keys. When I looked back, The pounding had stopped. The door hung open. The children stood outside, staring at me with eyes that held no end. No bottom, no mercy. "We will follow," the girl said. Grief follows. I peeled out of the canyon, gravel spraying, tears blurring my vision. I didn't stop driving until I reached the state line. I moved to another city, changed numbers, cut ties. But the thing about grief is it doesn't disappear. It sleeps. And some nights, when the world is too quiet and my thoughts drift back to Amarillo, I hear tapping on my window, polite, patient, childlike, and a voice whispering through the darkness, "Sir, please, let us in." I never believed in the Mothman stories when I was growing up, even though Point Pleasant, West Virginia, practically breathes folklore. The town clings to the Ohio River like something afraid of being forgotten. And maybe that's why the legend stuck, the giant winged creature with glowing red eyes, said to appear before disaster. My mother used to tell me that some people still blamed the 1967 Silver Bridge collapse on it, claiming the sightings were an omen. 46 people died that day. 46 lives swallowed because a single eye-bar failed, according to the official report. But locals whispered a different explanation, one rooted in the dozen sightings of a winged figure haunting the TNT area north of town just weeks before the tragedy. I always rolled my eyes. I left Point Pleasant at 19, convinced I'd never return. But life has a twisted way of dragging you back to the places you fear the most. When my older brother Aaron disappeared this past August, vanished without a trace during one of his midnight photography hikes, I found myself driving back across the Ohio River, passing the memorial plaque for the Silver Bridge victims. It was just like stepping into the past, the same damp air rising off the river, the same lonely warehouses near the old TNT plant, the same hollow quiet that settles over the town at night. Sheriff Donahue greeted me with a tired nod when I arrived at the station. He'd known our family for decades. "Aaron liked to chase ghost stories," he said gently, "but the area he went into, it's not safe. Those old bunkers aren't stable." I didn't tell him that Aaron's last voicemail to me, left at 2:17 a.m., didn't sound like someone worried about unstable ground. He sounded terrified. "If anything happens to me," he whispered in the message, his breath shaking, "don't go looking. Don't go where I went. It sees you when you look at it. It sees through you, then static. Then silence." I hadn't slept since hearing it. That first night back, I stayed at my mother's old house, the one we grew up in before she passed. The familiar creaks of the floorboards felt wrong, like the house had been waiting too long, listening too closely. I found Aaron's room untouched, just as he left it before moving out. On his desk was a photo he'd taken 2 months earlier, a long exposure shot of the McClintock Wildlife Management Area, where the old TNT bunkers sit hidden among overgrown trees. But in the far corner of the frame, nearly lost in the blurred treetops, was a shape, humanoid, tall, wings extended, 2 faint red glimmers where eyes should be. I told myself it was lens flare. I told myself anything that kept the rising dread at bay. Around midnight, unable to sleep, I went for a walk along the river. The breeze was warm, carrying the scent of algae and rust from the old collapsed bridge site. For a moment, everything felt still, almost peaceful. Until I heard the first sound, a soft, low hum, like something vibrating through metal. I paused, thinking maybe it came from one of the river barges. Then came the second sound, closer, this time a rustle of wings, but too heavy to be any bird in West Virginia. I turned slowly toward the trees lining the riverbank. That's when I saw them. 2 red lights, faint at first, like the glow of distant taillights. But they weren't reflections. They were eyes, high off the ground, staring straight at me. I froze, breath caught in my throat. The eyes blinked once slow, deliberate, and the shape attached to them shifted in the shadows. It was tall, taller than any person. The faint outline of wings unfurled behind it like a living shadow stretching across the trees. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the pavement, but when I looked again, the figure was gone. The next morning, I went to see a man named Harris, a local historian who ran the small Mothman museum downtown. He'd known my brother well. Aaron was obsessed with the truth, Harris said, adjusting his thick glasses. He didn't chase monsters. He chased explanations. He handed me a folder, thick with old newspaper clippings. Eyewitness accounts from 1966. Couples reporting a massive creature chasing their car outside the TNT area. Reports of strange screeching noises echoing through the bunkers. Sightings of glowing red eyes watching from treetops. And then the Silver Bridge collapse just 13 months later. People say Mothman is a harbinger, Harris continued. It doesn't cause disaster, it warns of it. I didn't respond, but my stomach twisted. If that were true, what was it warning me about now? I spent the afternoon retracing Aaron's last known route into the TNT area. The place was a maze of old factories, rusted machinery, and overgrown concrete igloos that once stored explosives. Every footstep echoed. Every distant bird call sounded like something else, something following. At the edge of Bunker Hashantu, I found Aaron's tripod lying in the weeds. Its legs were bent, snapped, almost as if something had crushed it in a sudden burst of force. My hands shook as I picked it up. The air felt colder there. Wrong. Like the shadows were thicker than they should be. Then, I heard it again, the low hum, vibrating through the bunker walls. The same sound I'd heard by the river. I approached the bunker entrance carefully. The metal door hung crooked, half torn from its hinges. When I shined my flashlight inside, I expected darkness. Instead, I saw scratch marks deep, jagged grooves torn into the concrete. Something big had been inside. Something strong. A loud metallic clang echoed behind me, and I spun around, flashlight trembling in my grip. A dark shape swept across the treetops, massive wings cutting through the air in a single powerful glide. Then it landed. Not gently, the ground trembled beneath my feet. It stood maybe 20 yards away, its outline towering against the canopy. Wings folded in, long legs bent like those of a bird, yet unmistakably humanoid. Its eyes burned red, glowing brighter as it stared at me, unblinking. My breath came in quick, shallow gasps, fight or flight. But my legs didn't move. The creature tilted its head, studying me, as if recognizing something familiar. Then, in one impossibly smooth motion, it opened its wings, each one stretching wider than a car, and launched into the sky with a deafening rush of air. I fell to my knees, heart racing so violently I thought it would burst. Before leaving the area, I noticed something else near the bunker. A camera, Aaron's. I grabbed it, clutching it like a lifeline as I fled back to my car. That evening, back at my mother's house, I powered on the camera, its battery miraculously intact. Only one video file remained, time-stamped the night he vanished. The footage was shaky at first, Aaron whispering to himself as he walked through the TNT area, talking about strange noises and rustling in the treetops. Then the humming sound began. Louder, closer. Aaron spun the camera upward, and for a split second, a dark winged shape soared overhead. He whispered, "It's real. Oh God, it's real." The next sounds were screaming, metal tearing, and then the camera hit the ground. The last frame before the video cut to static was a pair of glowing red eyes descending toward the lens. I dropped the camera, my whole body trembling. Something had taken Aaron. Something ancient, powerful, and impossible. And now it had seen me too. That night, as I sat awake in the dim glow of the living room lamp, the windows began to rattle softly, then harder, then violently, like something massive was flying just overhead, disrupting the air around the house. I looked out the window against every instinct, screaming at me not to, and saw a silhouette perched on the telephone pole across the street, tall, winged, watching, waiting. Its eyes glowed red in the darkness, unblinking. And that was when I realized something horrifying. Mothman didn't appear randomly. It didn't show itself to just anyone. It appeared to people linked to coming disaster, people marked by tragedy, people already on the brink. And now it had come for me. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Every time I drifted off, I saw those wings blotting out the moon. That faceless head turning toward me with something that wasn't human curiosity, but something closer to recognition. And by dawn, my mind felt like it had been soaking in ice water. I dragged myself to the diner on Vianne Street, hoping coffee would pull me together before I had to dig into the material I'd brought for the documentary. And the TV above the counter was running a segment on historical U.S. infrastructure failures. The moment I heard the words Silver Bridge, my heart freeze-framed. The footage played like the universe was mocking me. The December 15th, 1967, collapse, 46 dead, steel and cars swallowed by black water, and even though I'd grown up hearing about it, seeing the twisted metal sinking again made my chest tighten. The waitress noticed me staring and said softly, "My grandma always said she saw a giant bird the week before it fell." Folks around here don't talk about it much, but they don't forget either. I tried to ask her what she meant, but an older man at the counter answered instead, without looking up from his plate. "They never forget the warnings," he muttered. "They just pretend to." His fork scraped the plate like a nail dragged over stone. The rest of the day, I kept seeing flickers of movement in the corner of my vision behind storefront windows, in reflections on car doors, in the shadows under the floodwall mural. A shape too large, too fluid, disappearing whenever I turned my head. By late afternoon, I drove toward the old TNT area again, not because I wanted to, but because something in me felt pulled, drawn, as if the thing I saw last night had left a thread tied around me. The sun dipped behind the trees, turning everything the color of old copper, and I followed the path past the second set of igloos when I heard footsteps behind me, light, soft, but deliberate. "Hello?" I called out, but the air swallowed my voice and gave me nothing back. I stepped into the clearing before the third igloo and saw the rusted metal door slightly open, swaying. The last time I'd been there, it had been shut tight. As I approached, the wind died completely. For a moment, there was nothing, no birds, no insects, not even my own breathing, just a hollow stillness that pressed against my eardrums. Then a whisper slid through the air, a low vibration more than a voice, like something brushing the inside of my skull. It wasn't words, not exactly, but I felt what it meant. You came back. I froze. My pulse slammed in my ears, and when the door drifted open a little more, I saw two red points deep in the dark. They didn't glow, they throbbed, as if synchronized with some massive, unseen heartbeat. I staggered backward, tripped over a root, and when I scrambled up, the points were suddenly outside the doorway, rising, until they were far above my head. The creature stepped into the dying light, not fully, just enough for me to see the outline of enormous wings spreading like jagged sails. The body tall and thin, but wrong in all the ways you can't describe without sounding insane. I ran. Branches slashed my face. Mud sucked at my shoes. My lungs burned. But I didn't stop, even when I heard the air shift behind me, like the slow beat of a heavy tarp caught in wind. I burst out of the woods and didn't look back until I reached my car. Nothing followed. Nothing moved. It was as if the forest had swallowed everything whole again. I drove straight to my motel, locked the door, shoved a chair under the knob, and sat on the bed shaking until midnight when something tapped on the window. Once, twice, a slow, deliberate rhythm. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then the tapping stopped and the night fell dead silent. When dawn came, I checked outside. No footprints, no marks. But etched into the condensation on the glass, just barely visible, were two long streaks, as though something had dragged its claws lightly across the surface. That was 3 months ago. The documentary never got finished. I haven't gone back to Point Pleasant, but I haven't escaped it either. Every few nights I wake up to the sound of wings in the darkness, not outside my house, but somewhere inside my mind, and I know it isn't over. People think the Mothman is an omen, something that shows up before disaster, but I don't think that's what it is at all. I think it attaches itself to people. I think it watches them until the moment they understand what it really wants. And I think it's still watching me now, waiting for the right time to show me why it came. Because sometimes warnings don't protect you. Sometimes they choose you. And sometimes they come back to collect.